All right, so the first thing we need to do is to go back to our Firebase project settings. And once you get there, make sure you are under your app. So if you have more than one app, make sure you get to the app that we're working on. In this case, it's Book Tracker. Remember that for each app, you can add other apps. In fact, if you go home, as such, you can see still under Book Tracker app, this is what I've been working with or on. If you click here, you can see we have the Book Tracker app web. This is the sign for web. This is what we've been using. You can actually add another app. Say add, you can add iOS, Android, Unit, and so forth. The Android in this case, right? So for Android here, the app name has to be exactly the same name that we have in our package. What that means is, go back to our code. Let's go ahead and open the Android. Let's close all of these. You'll see that we have this Android folder there. So app as such, and go to this build Gradle like this. And you can see here we have this application ID. In this case, it's book tracker as such. So all we have to do is just copy the same thing, what we have here. This could be changed obviously, but we're just going to use that. And go back and add that there. Okay. And for the nickname, you can add whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. In this case, I can just say a.reader tester, something like that. And this we'll just leave as it is for now. And then we're going to go ahead and say register app. So what's happening now is Firebase is provisioning everything in the back end to create this Google services.json. And it tells us exactly what we need to do with this Google server.json. It tells us that we need to put that inside of our app folder as the root, right? As you see here. So first we need to actually download it. So I'm going to go ahead and download that right away. We're going to leave this as it is for now. And next we're going to add into our project. So it has to be exactly as you see here. Now, the way things look here is a little bit different than what you're going to be seeing because this screenshot is taken using Android Studio. But the concept is the same. It says we have to put inside of the app folder at that root level, as you see there. Back to our code as such. So there is the app. It has to be inside there. So I'm going to just drag and drop it inside our app like this. All right. And you can see when we drop it there, you can see that there's a lot of information in a JSON format which pertains to this application, which is very important because this is needed when we are bundling everything together, building this app for Android. This is read internally so that he knows exactly what needs to be done to build the Android app. Next, what we need to do is we need to go to the manifest file. So if you go again inside of app, go to source, go to main, and there is this Android manifest.xml. This is where we can change, for instance, the title or the name of the app. In this case, it's just Book Tracker. We can just change to whatever we want, right? We can say, for instance, a book tracker like this, or a book, doesn't matter, whatever we want, okay? So this is where we change all these things. But most importantly also, this is also where we can add permissions as to what is the application is going to require for it to run properly. And these permissions are very important in Android because it guarantees that the Android sandbox is always protected and allows users who are installing this app to know exactly what are the things they need to give permission for the app to do. For instance, one of which that's very important is the internet permission. So we need to actually add that internet permission whenever we want to deploy an Android application on an actual device for other people to use. So we're going to add the internet permission to this application. So to do that, you put right at the top there. So uses permission internet like that. Okay. So next we're going to go to the build.gradle. Okay. So I'm going to click that and there we go. Now in build.gradle here, we have this application ID, which we left as it is. Now, keep in mind that you must have a unique application ID because the Google Store will always look at this app ID to identify your Android app. So it has to be unique and you can't change it once you've set up and you've pushed your app to the public. It's very important. Now, because we've used this same thing to create our JSON, Google Services JSON there, I'll just leave as it is. The other thing I would like to change here says the minimum SDK version is 16. We're going to change this to a higher SDK version because there's other dependencies that we will need later that are only available at minimum SDK version 21. So change that to 21. And while we're still here, notice that we have this, of course, we've added this Google services.json, but we need to also make it so that our build.gradle, when the Android framework builds this app as an Android app, it needs to know exactly where to find, right, this Google services. To do that, we need to add the apply plugin. So this piece of code here, I'm going to put it there. Remember, it's inside of build.gradle, just right underneath this Flutter root there. So we need to pass this com.google.jms.google-services. So we're saying we're going to apply this Google Services JSON so that it knows which to parse and get the information it needs so that the Firebase works in the app. Make sure to save that. So this is the main Gradle. There's another Gradle here which is outside. If you close this app there, notice that the Gradle will be working on is gone, but there's another one outside. Okay, so click that. There's something else we'll need to add here. Yes, there's a lot of things, one of which is to pass the class path to where it can find the Google services. Now this com.google.jms Google services, this is the version I have right now. Where'd you see all this information? Well, if we go back to where we've left things off in our Firebase overview there, okay, we've added the Google services. I can go ahead and say next, and it'll give you all the information you need. Okay, some of these information you may not quite need, but some of it you will need it. One of which is this class path that we added inside of the project build.gradle. So what I've just done right now is added this line, the com JMS Google service. Now it says here 4.3.8, and I've just added the 4.3.5. That's because, but I can just add 4.3.8 like this. That works as well. Okay, so whatever version that you have here, in fact, you can just copy, click here, copy from there, and make sure again you follow exactly what you need to put. It's called project level build.gradle, which means it's not the one inside of app that we've been working on. It's not this one, right? It's going to be this one here. And we can read other things. We need to add this as well inside of our all projects. Let's go back. We already have that Google inside of all projects repositories there, so that's fine. If you don't have that, make sure to add that. We're doing backwards here. Notice that I added this apply plugin, which we added inside of this previous build.gradle. This is the app Gradle, right? We added as plugin. We added the plugin Google services. So this is what they're referring to. And in this case here, we don't need to add any of these. So in our case, we're just going to ignore that. Okay, so I'm just going to say next. If there's nothing else for us to do for Android at this point, at least right here. These are the steps that we need to follow to make sure that this actually works on a device or on an emulator. All right, so in the next video, we're going to continue doing the setup.